The great council chamber on the space station fell silent as the alien stepped forward. His crystal body shook with fear as he looked at the hundreds of different species sitting around the massive room. Ambassador Zethkar had come from the far edge of the galaxy to bring terrible news. "Friends from across the stars," he began, his voice carrying the weight of countless dead worlds, "we face the end of everything we know and love. The machines we call the Devourers have swept through our space like a plague. They eat everything in their path and turn it into fuel for their endless hunger." The room buzzed with worried whispers. The tall metal beings called Torvani clicked their claws nervously. The cloud-like ethereals flickered with anxiety. Even the ancient Rilani who had ruled space for thousands of years looked afraid. 17 different civilizations have been wiped out completely, Zethkar continued. The Kepler Nebula is gone. Billions of lives snuffed out in mere days. Our greatest warships cannot even scratch their hulls. Every time we attack them, they learn from our weapons and become stronger. At the back of the chamber, Captain Jake. Morrison sat quietly with his small human team. The other aliens barely noticed them. To most of the galaxy, humans were still newcomers who had only just learned to travel between stars. They were considered too violent and unpredictable to be trusted with real power. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter leaned over to check her tablet. The numbers she saw made her stomach turn. If the Devourers were really as unstoppable as the crystal, Alien claimed, then every living thing in the galaxy was doomed. "We have tried everything," Zethkar said, his voice breaking. The Hegemony sent their biggest ships. The Void Walkers used their phase technology. We even found weapons left behind by the ancients themselves. Nothing works. The Devourers adapt to everything we throw at them. The chamber erupted in panic. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves facing extinction together. The proud Rilani, who had spent decades telling humans they were too primitive for galactic society, now looked desperately at the small human delegation. "Captain Morrison," Zethkar said directly, "your people have a reputation for fighting, in ways that others find disturbing. We formally ask for Earth's help in stopping this threat." Jake stood slowly. Despite representing one of the youngest species in the galaxy, his presence commanded attention. "Ambassador, for the past 50 years your people have told us we're too dangerous for civilized space. You've banned us from your trade routes and excluded us from your treaties. Now you want our help?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Many of the aliens shifted in their seats. Remembering how they had treated the humans, Admiral Chunwei, the senior human officer, spoke up. "The Terran Federation will need to discuss this request with our government. We'll have an answer within 1 day." As the meeting ended, the aliens began to leave in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Many looked at the humans with new interest. If the situation was desperate enough for the proud Rilani to ask for help from a species they considered primitive, then perhaps humans were more dangerous than they had believed. Lisa walked beside Jake as they headed to their ship. "Do you think they'll say yes back home?" Jake's eyes were cold as he thought about the request. "Oh, they'll say yes. The question is whether these aliens really understand what they're asking for." The human ship was small compared to the massive vessels of the other species, but it was built for war. Every line of its hull spoke of violence and efficiency. As they boarded, Jake couldn't help but smile grimly. For 50 years, the galaxy had treated humans like dangerous children. They had been afraid of human unpredictability and violence. They had made laws to limit human expansion and restricted their access to advanced technology. Now, faced with an enemy that their advanced weapons couldn't defeat, they were turning to the very people they had tried to suppress. "Sir," Lisa said as they settled into the ship's command center, "what? Do you think they'll authorize?" Jake looked out at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, machines were consuming entire worlds and turning them into fuel for their endless expansion. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had failed to stop them. Now they wanted humanity to try. "Everything," he said quietly. "They're going to authorize everything we've ever built. Everything we've ever dreamed of building, and everything we've been too afraid to build. The galaxy is about to learn why they were right to fear us." The ship's engines came to life with a low rumble. As they pulled away from the station, Jake thought about the weapons hidden in secret facilities across human space. Weapons that other species would consider impossible or too dangerous to exist. Weapons that had been built by a species that had learned to survive by never fighting fair. The galaxy had asked for humanity's help. Soon, they would discover that help from humans came with a price they had never imagined. The emergency meeting took place deep inside Luna Station, hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon. President Mary Johnson sat at the head of the table, her face serious as she reviewed the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The Devourers aren't just eating planets, Admiral Chunwei reported through the secure connection. They're learning from every battle. Every weapon we've seen them face, they adapt to within hours. Traditional warfare is completely useless against them. General Sam Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair. The old soldier had scars from the Centauri War, and his eyes held the hard wisdom of someone who had seen too much death. Ma'am, our science teams have been studying the data. These things aren't just machines. They're part organic, part synthetic, and they evolve faster than anything we've ever encountered. What options do we have? President Johnson asked. Very few, Admiral Patricia Hayes answered from her flagship. If we fight them the same way everyone else has, we'll lose just like everyone else. The Devourers will study our weapons and tactics, then use them against us. Dr. Alan Cooper, head of military research, activated a holographic display. However, we do have some advantages. Our military has always been built around doing the unexpected. While other species rely on superior technology or larger numbers, we've always won by being unpredictable and creative. Creative? President Johnson raised an eyebrow. What he means, General Rodriguez said with a dark smile, is that we cheat. We've never fought a fair fight in our entire history. The galaxy calls us primitive, but we've never lost a war because we refuse to play by their rules. Colonel Danny Foster, who ran the secret weapons programs, spoke up. We've been developing some very unusual weapon systems. Projects that other species would think are either impossible or too dangerous to build. Like what? The president asked. Quantum weapons that don't just destroy matter but break apart the forces that hold it together? Tiny black holes that we can aim like bullets. And Project Prometheus, smart warships that can think and adapt faster than any living mind. The room went quiet as everyone understood what he was describing. These weren't just weapons of war. They were tools of complete destruction that could threaten entire star systems. Ma'am, Admiral Hayes said carefully, if we use these weapons, we might not be able to control the damage. We're talking about forces that could destroy whole solar systems. President Johnson walked to the large window that looked out at Earth. The blue planet hung peacefully in space, unaware of the terrible machines moving toward it through the darkness. For 50 years, she said slowly, the galaxy has treated us like dangerous children. They've limited where we can go, what we can trade, and how we can defend ourselves. They've made laws specifically to keep us weak. Now they want us to save them. She turned back to face the group. Very well. We'll give them exactly what they've always been afraid we were. Admiral Hayes, prepare every ship we have. General Rodriguez, activate all the secret projects. Dr. Cooper, I want everything. Every experimental weapon, every theoretical technology, every nightmare scenario we've ever imagined. Ma'am, Colonel Foster asked, what about the Galactic Accords? The weapons limitation treaties? President Johnson's smile was cold and hard. Colonel, the galaxy just asked us to unleash our fury. I think we can forget about those treaties for now. Within hours, messages went out to secret facilities across human space. Deep underground laboratories began powering up equipment that had never been tested. Shipyards that officially didn't exist started building vessels designed for one purpose: to fight enemies that couldn't be defeated by conventional means. On a hidden base near Jupiter, scientists worked frantically to complete weapons that bent the laws of physics. On Mars, Engineers assembled ships that could think for themselves and make decisions too fast for human minds to follow. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. They had asked for help from the species they considered the most violent and unpredictable in known space. They were about to learn that their fears had been completely justified. Dr. Cooper stood in his laboratory, watching as technicians made final adjustments to a device that could turn matter into energy and energy into nightmares. "Are we really going to do this?" he asked quietly. General Rodriguez, standing beside him, nodded grimly. "They wanted our help. They're going to get it. The question is whether they'll survive what comes next." Across human space, the war machine was awakening. Ships that had been dreams were becoming reality. Weapons that had been theories were being loaded into launchers. The galaxy had asked humanity to save them from the Devourers. They were about to discover that the cure might be worse than the disease. The human fleet that appeared above the planet Nexus Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 200 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. But these weren't the elegant vessels that other species built. These were machines of war that looked as deadly as they actually were. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the TNS Retribution, watching his fleet take position around the besieged world. The remaining Galactic Council ships hung in desperate defensive formations around the planet's orbital stations, their hulls scarred from previous battles with the Devourers. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter reported, "we're getting communications from the alien flagship. They seem confused by our ship designs." Jake smiled grimly. "They're about to be more confused. Signal all ships, prepare for combat. Begin with Protocol 7. Across the fleet, the human ships began to change. Hull plates slid back to reveal weapon systems that shouldn't have been possible. The TNS Vengeance uncovered arrays that could break apart reality itself. The TNS Fury activated fields that bent space and time. "Sir," Ensign Katie Murphy called from her station. "Enemy contacts detected. 300 Devourer ships approaching from the edge of the system. The enemy vessels were terrifying to see. They combined organic curves with mechanical precision, their hulls seeming to shift and change even as they flew through space. They had learned from every battle, taking the best features from every species they had defeated and adding them to their own designs. They're perfect predators," whispered Dr. Greg Palmer, the fleet's alien expert. "They've evolved beyond the limits of biology. They're about to be extinct," Jake replied coldly. "Signal all ships. Project Prometheus is authorized. Release the hunters." From the bellies of 13 human ships, new vessels began to emerge. These weren't built for human crews. They were pure artificial intelligence, designed to think and adapt at speeds no biological mind could match. The Prometheus ships were sleek, deadly, and completely autonomous. "Prometheus units report ready for combat," Lisa announced. "They're eager to fight, sir," Jake nodded. The artificial minds had been programmed with human tactical creativity, but none of the hesitation that came with wanting to stay alive. They were excited to test themselves against the Devourers. The battle began when the Devourer fleet entered weapons range. Their adaptive energy beams struck out at the Galactic Council ships, quickly analyzing and overcoming their defenses. But when they turned their attention to the human vessels, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't try to resist the attacks. Instead, they adapted faster than the Devourers could learn. The TNS Retribution's hull flowed like liquid metal, changing shape to deflect energy beams. The TNS Vengeance phased in and out of normal space, making it impossible to target. "Impossible," came the shocked voice of the alien commander over the communication channel. "How are they adapting so quickly?" "Simple," Jake replied calmly. "We built our ships to fight enemies exactly like this. The Devourers learn from each battle, so we built ships that learn faster. The Prometheus units attacked with inhuman precision. They didn't just strike at the enemy ships. They attacked their ability to adapt. Computer viruses infected the Devourer networks, corrupting their learning systems. Weapons that broke apart basic forces unraveled the hybrid hulls at the atomic Level, enemy fleet is breaking apart, Lisa reported. They're trying to retreat. Negative, Jake said firmly. We don't let them escape to learn from this fight. Signal the fleet, execute solar protocol. The order sent chills through the human crews. Solar protocol was theoretical, a weapon system so destructive it had never been tested in actual combat. The TNS Retribution and 5 other ships formed a pattern around the retreating Devourer fleet. Sir, Dr. Palmer called out nervously, the energy readings are beyond anything we've measured. If this doesn't work, it'll work, Jake replied. And if it doesn't, we'll try something else. That's what humans do. The 6 ships began to glow with inner light as their quantum cores synchronized to create a localized star. Space itself twisted and buckled as the artificial sun took shape. The Devourer ships, caught in the gravitational storm, were pulled helplessly toward the burning heart of humanity's newest weapon. The artificial star lasted only seconds, but it was enough. When the light faded, the Devourer fleet was gone. Not destroyed, but completely unmade at the subatomic level. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the human fleet calmly reformed and began rescue operations for the survivors on Nexus Prime. They had not just defeated the Devourers. They had erased them from existence. Captain Morrison, came the shaken voice of the alien commander. What have you done? Jake's response was broadcast across the galaxy for everyone to hear. What you asked us to do, we unleashed our fury. The news of the human victory at Nexus Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major communication network was showing footage of the artificial star weapon. The images played over and over, each viewing making the alien species more afraid of what humanity was truly capable of. On the bridge of the TNS Retribution, Captain Jake Morrison found himself drowning in communications from terrified alien leaders. Every species in the galaxy wanted explanations, technical data, or simply to express their horror at what they had witnessed. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter reported, we have priority calls from the Galactic Council, the Hegemony, and pretty much every government in known space. Jake rubbed his forehead tiredly. Put the Council through first. Let's get this over with. Ambassador Zethkar appeared on the screen, his crystal body flickering with what Jake recognized as extreme fear. Captain Morrison, the Council demands an immediate explanation for the use of banned weapons. Banned? Jake's voice carried a dangerous edge. Ambassador, your people came to us begging for help. We gave it to you. The Devourer threat has been eliminated from this system. At what price? The voice belonged to High Chancellor Vorth of the Hegemony, his insect-like features twisted with worry. The energy readings from your weapon suggest it could destroy entire star systems. Such weapons are forbidden under galactic law. President Mary Johnson's image appeared alongside the alien leaders. Chancellor Vorth, the Terran Federation never signed those agreements? We were considered too primitive for full membership, remember? The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. For decades, the galaxy's older races had used humanity's supposed lack of advancement as an excuse to exclude them from treaties and trade deals. The situation has changed, Admiral Chunwei interjected from the council chambers. Long-range sensors are detecting Devourer fleets in 7 other systems. They're not just attacking the outer regions anymore. They're heading for the core worlds. Dr. Alan Cooper appeared via hologram, his expression grim. Analysis of the destroyed Devourer ships shows they were part of a much larger network. We estimate there are about 10,000 units spread across the galaxy, all sharing information and evolving together. The true scope of the threat began to sink in. The Devourers weren't individual ships. They were a single distributed intelligence, spread across thousands of vessels, learning and growing stronger with each encounter. The battle at Nexus Prime was just a test, President Johnson explained. They were studying our capabilities just as we were studying theirs. The real war is about to begin. General Sam Rodriguez appeared on screen from Earth's Defense Command. Ma'am, we've detected massive Devourer formations moving toward 3 critical locations: the Andromeda Gate, the Vega Industrial Complex, and Earth itself. The mention of Earth sent a chill through everyone listening. If the Devourers were targeting humanity's homeworld directly, they had learned to strike at the heart of human space. "How long do we have?" asked Admiral Patricia Hayes from her. "Flagship, 72 hours, Dr. Cooper replied grimly. "Maybe less." Jake stood and addressed the assembled leaders with cold determination. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have a choice. You can spend the next 3 days arguing about laws and treaties while the Devourers consume everything you care about, or you can give us the authority to do whatever is necessary." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Ambassador Zefkar asked. Nervously, "Total war," Jake replied simply. "No restrictions, no limitations, no moral boundaries. We deploy every weapon system we've ever developed, regardless of how dangerous it might be. We turn the galaxy into a battlefield, and we don't stop until every last devourer is destroyed." The ethereal representative, speaking through patterns of light, expressed what they were all thinking. "And what happens to the galaxy after you've unleashed such devastation?" Jake's smile was cold and predatory. "That depends entirely on whether you trust us to know when to stop." President Johnson stepped forward. "The Terran Federation is prepared to take full responsibility for the conduct of this war. We'll deploy whatever weapons are necessary to ensure victory, but we need complete authority to act without interference from anyone." "You're asking us to give you unlimited power to remake the galaxy however you want," Chancellor Vorth accused. "No," Jake corrected. "We're asking you to let us save it. What you do with it afterward is entirely up to you." The vote was close, but desperation overcame fear. By the narrowest of margins, the Galactic Council granted the Terran Federation emergency military authority to combat the Devourer threat using any means necessary. As the transmission ended, Lisa turned to Jake with worry in her eyes. "Sir, do you really think we can win this?" Jake looked out at the stars, where enemy fleets were already gathering for the final assault on everything they held dear. "We're about to find out just how furious humanity can really become when everything we love is threatened." The galaxy had never seen anything like the human war machine when it was fully unleashed. Within hours of receiving unlimited authority, the Terran Federation began deploying weapons that broke every known law of physics and several that hadn't even been discovered yet. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching real-time displays show the positioning of forces across 3 massive theaters of war. The scale of the operation was staggering. Humanity was fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously, each requiring completely different approaches to victory. "Report," she commanded tersely. Colonel Danny Foster stepped forward, his face grim with the weight of terrible knowledge. "The Andromeda Gate is holding, but barely. Admiral Brown's fleet is using the new temporal displacement weapons. They're literally aging the enemy ships to death in seconds. But the Devourers are adapting faster than we expected." "What about the Vega Industrial Complex?" Hayes asked. "Mixed results. Captain Kelly's forces are deploying the nanoplague weapons. They're effective at destroying enemy ships, but the collateral damage is severe. We've had to evacuate 3 entire star systems to prevent the plague from spreading to civilian populations." Hayes nodded grimly. "The nanoplague was designed to take apart matter at the molecular level, but once released it was nearly impossible to control." "And Earth?" "That's where things get interesting," Foster replied with a dark expression. "Captain Morrison's fleet is implementing Project Lazarus?" The name sent a chill through everyone in the command center. Project Lazarus was purely theoretical, a weapon system that could bring destroyed matter back to life by manipulating the fundamental forces of reality. It was also completely untested and potentially catastrophic for the entire universe. On the bridge of the TNS Retribution, Captain Jake Morrison watched as the massive Devourer fleet approached Earth's solar system. Nearly 2,000 enemy vessels gleamed with adaptive armor and bristled with weapons learned from 100 conquered civilizations. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter reported, "the enemy fleet is holding position at the edge of the system. They're waiting for something." "For what?" asked Dr. Greg Palmer nervously. "For us to make the first move," Jake replied calmly. "They know we have new weapons, They want to see what we deploy so they can adapt to it? Ensign Katie Murphy looked up from her console with confusion. Sir, if they're just going to adapt to whatever we use, how can we possibly win? Jake smiled coldly. We make them adapt to something that kills them in the process of adapting. Signal the fleet, activate Project Lazarus. Across the solar system, human ships began to glow with an eerie blue light that seemed to come from another dimension. The Lazarus system didn't just create weapons, it created paradoxes. Matter that was simultaneously destroyed and rebuilt, energy that flowed backward through time, gravity that pushed instead of pulled. The first attack from the human fleet was unlike anything ever seen in the history of galactic warfare. Quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions at once, plasma cannons that fired pure entropy, and gravity bombs that created localized time loops where cause and effect became meaningless. The Devourer fleet tried desperately to adapt, but adaptation required understanding, and the human weapons were deliberately designed to be completely incomprehensible. How do you defend against a missile that arrives before it's fired? How do you create armor against a weapon that attacks you in the past? Enemy fleet is fragmenting, reported Lisa with amazement. They're trying to withdraw and regroup. Negative, Jake said with absolute finality. They don't get to retreat? And learn from this encounter. Signal all ships, execute Omega Protocol. The order was met with stunned silence across the entire fleet. Omega Protocol was the ultimate weapon, so dangerous that even mentioning its name was classified beyond top secret. It was designed to destroy not just matter, but the very concept of matter itself. Sir, Dr. Palmer said quietly, Omega Protocol is completely theoretical. We have absolutely no idea what the consequences might be for the universe. The consequences of not using it are pretty clear, Jake replied without hesitation. Execute the order. The TNS Retribution began to transform, its hull reconfiguring itself into a massive array of quantum manipulation devices that hurt to look at directly. Similar transformations were taking place across the entire fleet as ships merged their systems into a single, galaxy-spanning weapon of unimaginable power. All ships report ready, Lisa announced with a trembling voice. Omega Protocol is armed and ready for deployment. Jake looked out at the enemy fleet, then at the blue marble of Earth hanging peacefully in space behind them. For every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, for every dreamer who imagined a better future, for every child who deserves to grow up free from fear. He pressed the activation key and reality itself screamed in agony. The Omega Protocol didn't just destroy the Devourer fleet above Earth, it removed them from existence entirely. Not just their physical forms, but their information, their history, their very concept of being. It was as if they had never existed at all, but the weapon didn't stop there. Across the galaxy, every Devourer ship, every trace of their technology, every record of their existence was simultaneously erased from reality. The distributed intelligence that had threatened to consume all organic life was simply gone, wiped from the universe as if it had been a bad dream. The silence that followed was deafening. Space itself seemed to hold its breath as the implications of what humanity had done slowly sank in. They had not just won a war, they had rewritten reality itself. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter whispered on the bridge of the TNS Retribution. What have we done? Captain Jake Morrison stared out at the empty space where thousands of enemy ships had been moments before. What we had to do, what we've always done. We protected our own, no matter the cost to ourselves or anyone else. 6 months after the end of the Devourer War, the galaxy was still trying to understand what humanity had unleashed. The Galactic Council chambers had been rebuilt, and representatives from hundreds of species gathered for the most important session in galactic history. President Mary Johnson stood before the assembled delegates, her presence commanding absolute attention from beings who had once considered her species primitive. Behind her, holographic displays showed the current state of galactic civilization with trade routes restored, colonies rebuilt, and the scars of war slowly healing. Honored representatives, she began with quiet authority, we gather today to discuss the future of our galaxy. The Devourer threat has been eliminated, but the weapons used to achieve that victory have fundamentally changed everything we thought we knew about the universe. Ambassador Zethkar of the Rolani Coalition stepped forward, his crystalline form now bearing new markings that Jake had learned indicated deep respect and gratitude. President Johnson, the Galactic Council wishes to formally acknowledge the debt we owe to humanity. Your species has saved us all from certain extinction. At considerable cost, interjected High Chancellor Vorth of the Hegemony with obvious concern. The weapons you deployed violated the fundamental laws of physics. As we understand them, we're still discovering the long-term effects on reality itself. Dr. Alan Cooper, now serving as humanity's chief science advisor to the galaxy, activated a holographic display showing complex data. The Omega Protocol did have some unexpected side effects throughout the galaxy. Several star systems experienced temporal fluctuations, and we've detected unusual quantum signatures in previously stable regions of space. Is the galaxy in danger from these effects? Asked the ethereal representative with flickering concern. Not in the way you might think, Cooper replied with a slight smile. The side effects are actually beneficial to organic life. We've observed increased stellar formation rates, more stable planetary orbits, and enhanced solar radiation that's accelerating the evolution of life-supporting worlds throughout the galaxy. The revelation sent murmurs of amazement through the assembly. Humanity hadn't just saved the galaxy from the Devourers. They had actually improved it in ways that would benefit all life for millions of years to come. Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted to head the new Galactic Defense Force, addressed the assembly with calm confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand at a crossroads in galactic history. The old galaxy with its rigid hierarchies and technological limitations is gone forever. The weapons we've developed have opened up possibilities that were previously unimaginable. What are you proposing? Asked Ambassador Zethkar with cautious curiosity. A completely new approach to galactic civilization, President Johnson replied. For too long, species have been limited by their biology, their culture, their fundamental nature as thinking beings. The technologies we've developed can change all of that. We can offer every species the ability to transcend their natural limitations. Admiral Patricia Hayes, now serving as Director of Galactic Reconstruction, stepped forward with enthusiasm. We've already begun sharing our adaptive technologies with allied species. The Rolani have increased their problem-solving capabilities by 300%. The Hegemony's new biomechanical hybrids are exploring regions of space that were previously completely inaccessible to organic life. And what do you ask in return for these gifts? The Hegemony Chancellor inquired with obvious suspicion. Partnership, Jake replied simply. For 50 years, you've treated us as dangerous primitives who couldn't be trusted with real responsibility. Now you've seen what we're capable of when we're truly unleashed. We propose a different kind of relationship based on mutual respect and shared goals for the future. The debate that followed lasted for many hours. Species that had looked down on humanity for decades were now forced to confront the reality of human technological superiority and their own dependence on human protection. The Galactic Council hereby recognizes the Terran Federation as the senior partner in galactic civilization. Ambassador Zethkar announced formally, we request human leadership in establishing new defense protocols and exploring technologies that could benefit all intelligent species. President Johnson nodded graciously. We accept that responsibility gladly. But understand clearly that we're not interested in ruling the galaxy through fear. We're interested in protecting it from threats that make the Devourers look like a minor inconvenience. As the session concluded, Jake looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's massive viewport. The galaxy was safe, but it was no longer the same. In the depths of space, ancient things stirred in response to the reality-warping effects of humanity's ultimate weapon. The age of human galactic dominance had begun.